Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. It's fight week. It's fight week for unbeaten up-and-comer Johanna Wonyou, who will be squaring off against Rivas, the former champion, in what is a WBA final eliminator to crown a mandatory challenger for reigning champion Nazarena Romero. Now, I've often talked about Johanna Wonyou, Johanna Wonder, here on the channel as being one of the very best fighters you haven't heard of in the women's super bantamweight division, super bantamweight. That is where Ellie Scottney currently reigns as a unified champion. Yemi Mercado, who Ellie is going to be fighting in her very next fight, and of course, Nazarena Romero. Johanna is vying to become her mandatory challenger, 24 years old, to Rivas, who's 37. Both fighters are orthodox fighters, leading with the left in order to set up the right. Johanna sports an unblemished record of 11 wins with no losses, no draws, 2 knockouts. To Rivas, who sports a professional record of 17 wins with 6 losses, 3 draws, 11 knockouts, having never been knocked out. In 26 professional bouts, the more experienced fighter of the two, though at 37 years old, there is such a thing as having too much experience, that perhaps Mayerline has amassed too many miles on the odometer. Last in action in October of last year, opposite the ring, another unbeaten up-and-comer in Micaiah Krapps, who won a unanimous decision over Mayerline over 8 rounds. Before that, the year before that, she faced Mexico's own Erica Cruz, who won a majority decision over Mayerline. You will notice that Mayerline has not been that active the last 12 months. The only fight that she had in the previous year was the Micaiah Krapps fight that she lost. Now she's kicking off this one with a fight against Johanna Wonyou, who saw action 2 times last year and 2 times the year before that. So Johanna is keeping a nice, steady schedule of activity. Best described as a boxer-puncher, but a boxer-puncher with a mean streak. And you want to pay attention to that, because so often, boxer-punchers with a mean streak are confused with pressure fighters. There is a subtle difference to them that most don't pick up on. While boxer-punchers with a mean streak like to come forward and press the issue, just like pressure fighters, they're not as reckless. They don't throw caution to the wind as much as a pressure fighter would. And they don't always have a pressure fighter's volume, a pressure fighter's work rate. That's another difference, a subtle one, between boxer punchers with a mean streak and pressure fighters. Johanna's really not a pressure fighter, but she does know how to apply pressure because she's a boxer puncher with a mean streak. And that's why I have her winning this weekend's fight against the former champion, Mayerline Rivas. The noticeably taller, longer fighter of the two, Mayerline, has always had a lot of length for these weights, super bantamweight, statuesque as far as 122-pounders go. Looking to use those long levers to box at range from a safe distance and beating those feet whenever the opponent closes in. So what you can expect to see when Johanna shares the ring with Mayerline is Johanna's going to be the aggressor, Mayerline is going to be the defender. Mayerline is going to backpedal, circling away from Johanna as Johanna closes in. It's going to be a repeat of Johanna's previous 2 fights with Wendell Cruz. It's going to be a repeat of Mayerline Rivas' fight with Erica Cruz. That's what it's going to look like. And at 37 years old, on those 37-year-old legs, I don't trust that Mayerline can keep distance often enough from Johanna to win the fight. Like she did in her other fights, she's going to try to move and punch and walk Johanna into counters, but no, I don't think that's going to work. I think Johanna is going to barrel forward, tuck behind that high guard, catching and shooting and exploiting opportunities, because I do think she's faster on her feet with faster hands than Mayerline Rivas. Looking to land the big overhand right, the looping right over the top as she closes in. She's going to explode on Mayerline is what she's going to do. Being the fresher, younger fighter with a fresher set of legs, it's going to be very difficult for Mayerline to keep Johanna off of her. Dwyer! And what is this WBA final eliminator to crown a mandatory challenger for Nazarena Romero, who's got her own set of problems, her own live animal that she has to deal with. On the undercard of Erickson Lubin's next fight on Pro Box, Nazarena has to deal with Mexico's own Mayeli Flores, a pressure fighter like Nazarena is a pressure fighter. Things are fast heating up in the women's super bantamweight division, because there's Wonyou versus Rivas, there's Romero versus Flores, and of course, there is Scottney versus Mercado. What I've been expecting when you have this proliferation of talent all in one weight class, there's gonna reach a point, a boiling point, where things start to heat up and it turns into a goddamn free-for-all. Every woman for themselves. And it's a lot harder to be the best in show in a deep, deep weight class like 122 as opposed to those barren divisions where Clarissa Shields campaigns, ruling over empty weight classes and crowning herself the greatest woman of all times for doing so. It's a lot harder to be the best in show at 122.
It's just reality.
So I have Johanna Wonyou winning the fight this weekend because she's fresher, younger, and faster.
Better looking, too.
Keep it classy, you pervert! Now, I don't know if Johanna knocks her out because Mayerline is tough and has never been knocked out. If nothing else, she may resort to fighting to survive, to not get knocked out. So at minimum, I have Johanna winning a points decision.
We were thinking about going fighting. Well, our plan was to fight Benavidez or Dubois. Those two guys, the best fighters in the division. But if for some reason that didn't happen, we didn't know what was going to happen with the belts. We were trying to fight Zurdo Ramirez. I talked to Zurdo Ramirez's manager 4 days ago before they announced that they gave the belt away. Maybe also do a catch weight later in a fight or two. With Zurdo Ramirez, maybe fight for all belts, the 175 and the cruiserweight, If not, we'll fight for Zurdo's belt. So he wants to fight. I think that's a great fight, a big fight that fans want to see two Mexicans get at it. Zurdo Ramirez is a great fighter, strong, big, and I think that's a good fight for the fans. So we're willing to give him that.
Revisiting this conversation, a fight that I expect to see in the not-so-distant future so long as Zurdo takes care of business with the Cuban, with the former champion, Uniel Dorticos. What Jose Benavidez said, that they wish to impose a catch weight on Zurdo Ramirez. For what reason, I don't know.
Yes, you do. They wish to weaken Zurdo Ramirez by bringing him down to, say, 180, 185, knowing full well they can make 200. They can make 200 pounds just fine. David walks around at 200 plus. You can see that with your own two eyes. This is a big boy. So you don't actually need a catch weight to fight Zurdo Ramirez, since he's a super middleweight who moved up to cruiser, like you'd be a super middleweight that's moving up to cruiser. So when you try to impose a catch weight on him, it's because you want to weaken him. It's because you don't want to have to fight him at full steam. Do you think that Golden Boy and Zurdo's team would go for that?
So I remember when Oscar De La Hoya told Shakur Stevenson that unless he signs to Golden Boy Promotions, he would not make that fight. And I believe that he would take a similar stance with David Benavidez, to where he needs to enter into some kind of an arrangement with Golden Boy to get that fight.
And if he does, then they might.
Might what?
Allow a catch weight to ensure the fight happens. Allow a catch weight to get the fight made.
There has to be something in it for Golden Boy, for them to go along with this, for them to do it, to give David access to their unified cruiserweight champion, and not only that, but acquiesce to a catchweight. There has to be something in it for Golden Boy, something more.
It's a little hard to imagine that they would do this without a commitment from David.
The changes that Zurdo Ramirez has made to his methodology, the movement, the defense, the counterpunching, he's really done a full 180 from the fighter that he used to be, because what he used to be was a mid-range to inside fighter just like David, and limited to being a mid-range to inside fighter up until recently when he moved up to cruiser, realizing that the guys are a lot bigger at cruiser and they take a better punch. You can't just win by strength of arms.
He'd add some wrinkles to your game.
He did. Stylistically, based on how Zurdo is looking, stylistically, he can beat David unless David weakens him. And that's what the catch weight is for. Don't get it in your head they're imposing a catch weight on Zurdo because they mean to toggle from 175 up to cruiser. It's not about being able to go back and forth. It's about weakening Zurdo.
Do you think if David Benavidez goes up to cruiser and wins 2 alphabet titles up there, he's going to go back down to 175 and put his body through that? I don't think so. The purpose of the catch weight is to weaken Zurdo to improve their own chances of victory.
By now, everybody knows about Zurdo's struggles with weight, busting at the seams at light heavyweight until he didn't have a choice but to move up to cruiser, where he is now
Crawford.
So when the goal is to deplete Zurdo preemptively, that could show up in his performance, his ability to move, and his ability to take a shot. A depleted fighter?
What is the probability that Zurdo Ramirez will walk into a situation like this one?
Well, look at what the alternative is. Fighting Jai Opataya, the most difficult and dangerous fight in the cruiserweight division, granted that it could be for a lot of money if Turkey pays for it, and I think he would.
But it's dangerous. Whereas fighting David Benavidez on his way up to cruiser is not as dangerous. It wouldn't require you to travel.
It would not require Oscar De La Hoya or Eric Gomez to give Turkey further access to their fighters. They can do it all on their own here in America and bill it as a box office fight.
Think they'd bill it as a pay-per-view?
In order to satisfy the fighters' financial demands, I absolutely think they would, and David Benavidez insists on fighting on pay-per-view exclusively. So if you do a Zurdo Ramirez fight at cruiserweight for 2 alphabet titles, I absolutely think they would bill it as a pay-per-view, because look at David's last couple of fights. They're billing interim fights as pay-per-views.
You don't think they'd do that with this one?
I don't think that Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy have ever been comfortable with the idea that they would allow Turkey Al Sheikh access to their stable of fighters, because it's not a very deep stable, and they might prefer to do their own thing on their own terms here in America. That's what makes this fight a distinct possibility, not just because Team Benavidez might want it, but because Golden Boy might want it.
Revealing that a part of the holdup in America as to why some fights don't happen, it's not even really the money.
Turkey's providing the money more than enough. Sometimes the holdup is these guys are protecting their fighters. And I think Golden Boy means to protect Zurdo from Jai by putting him in there with David.
In men's heavyweight news, I'm sure most of you have heard by now, per veteran boxing scribe Mike Kopinger, Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois are in the process of finalizing a deal for a Ring Magazine and Undisputed Heavyweight Championship rematch July 12th at London's Wembley Stadium, sources told Ring Magazine. Emphasis on Undisputed, that this will once again be for all the marbles in the heavyweight division, and a chance to make more history for Daniel and, of course, for Usyk.
But one is left to wonder, where does this leave Joseph Parker, the WBO's interim champion and the next man in line to challenge Usyk as his mandatory? I heard a rumor a little over a week ago, and I don't know how true it is, that Joseph Parker's going into an Anthony Joshua rematch.
What?
It's what I heard a little over a week ago. And when I thought about it, I thought to myself, well, why would Joseph do that?
What would be the point?
One way to look at it is that it would be a chance for revenge for Joseph Parker to avenge the loss that he suffered to Anthony Joshua many years ago, as well as catching Anthony at a very opportune time. Remember, Anthony's coming off a knockout loss to Daniel Dubois, whereas Joseph is coming off a string of high-profile victories, high-profile wins. Joseph is riding high, and AJ may be down in the dumps. So if you're asking yourself, why would Joseph do it?
That's why. It's just a rumor, and it should be treated as such. But entertaining the possibility that the rumor might be true, that might be why they're doing it. And If you're Anthony Joshua, why would you want to fight Joseph Parker again? He's WBO interim champion. You beat him for a second time. You're in line to fight for a title. And it's the devil that you know.
If you're Anthony Joshua, you're not in unfamiliar territory. You have the added benefit that you've fought this fighter before, beat this fighter before, and you need a confidence-building fight. You can go into this one with the confidence from your previous fights. So that rounds out the rumor and why it might be true. And if nothing else, love him or hate him, Anthony's worth a lot of money. A lot of money gets generated whenever he fights. If nothing else, that is an incentive.
Usyk versus Dubois, too.
Boxing insider Rick Glacier reacted to that news by saying Usyk versus Dubois this summer in England is a very interesting rematch, as Dubois now has huge confidence riding off his win over Anthony Joshua in that knockout victory. Dubois will be fired up in front of his fellow countrymen, and we know Dubois has got serious power, with confidence this time.
Perhaps a false sense of confidence? Look,
Listen.
you beat Jarrell Miller, and you beat Filip Prgovic, and you knocked out Anthony Joshua, but none of those fighters' methodology is comparable with Usyk's, who already beat you. And rematches often being won by the fighter who can change, the fighter who can adjust. I still feel like that's Usyk more than Daniel, even though Usyk's getting up
there in age, he's still capable of making changes and taking the experiences from the first fight to adjust to a rematch. It's not a secret what Daniel's gonna try to do.
He's gonna try to mow down Usyk. He's gonna try to overpower him. But how is that different from what he did in the first fight?
Rick thinks it's because he's more confident now than he was going into the first fight.
I don't disagree with that he may be more confident, not just because of the string of victories that he's had, but because in his own mind, he hurt Alexander Usyk. That controversial blow to the belt line should have been a knockout win. Daniel's got that on the brain, and that will add confidence to him.
In his own mind, he feels, I can hurt Alexander. All I have to do is make more of a commitment to the body.
That's what he's telling himself.
Now that in and of itself doesn't make it true, but that is what he's thinking. Likely replaying that critical moment in his mind and what more he could have done. Time, making things hazy. If it were easy to go to Usyk's body, then you would have did that the night of. If it were easy to keep going there.
That's what he's forgetting, that after you landed that meaty punch, belt line or otherwise,
why didn't you stick to it? Why didn't you keep going there? And what you're forgetting is because it ain't easy. You go to his body, you leave that side of your face open for counters.
Of course, Usyk's age is a factor, that he's getting on in age. He's 37 going on 38 years old. Can he do it again? Can lightning strike twice?
A legitimate question in what is one of the more spontaneous and unpredictable divisions in all of boxing, because, well, at heavyweight, you're always one punch away from being knocked out, and that applies to everybody, but I still have Usyk as the favorite.
It's hard not to.
This guy has almost never had the red carpet rolled out for him in unfavorable circumstances in almost every title fight he's ever been in, to where now it's hard not to pick him. It's hard not to favor him, for him to be the favorite.
So Daniel's gonna have home field advantage. So did Krzysztof Glowacki. So did Mayris Briedis. So did Murat Gassiev, Derek Chisora, Tony Bellew, Anthony Joshua.
They all had home field advantage like you're about to have home field advantage, and it didn't help them. So now that you've got it, I don't really think it makes much of a difference. I don't really think it's going to help you. Not if he takes it out of the judge's hands like he did before. Not if he stops you.